Hello, welcome to Philosophy Roulette 137, where we read philosophy papers and review them live on the air. I've now switched up my category on Twitch, so I'm on just chatting as opposed to podcasts. I wonder if that'll make a difference. Anywho, let's let's try out Phil Archive, see if anything is on the front page of Phil Archive today, and see what that is. Social theory and practice. It's 11 pages. Take a look at that one. This is 15 pages. Psycholinguistics. Space as a semantic unit of a language of consciousness. That just scares me. I'm sorry. It's like not happening. Alright, this looks like physics. Unfortunately, there's too many equations, and if I have to talk about equations, that's extremely difficult to discuss. So let's misunderstanding metaphysics. Diametros. Never seen this genre before. Take a gander at it. So, philosophy and social criticism, or why a socialist society does not need to be a fraternal community. So what are they? Anti-French? No fraternity. Australasian? Oh my god, something in the AJP that's short enough. Okay, so that must be the shortest thing that they let through. This is a 3-page article. It's a little too short even for me. What humans should say about tide-based systems. Okay, well, you know, it's an analysis. I just kind of have to. Go to fill papers, because I like the layout here a little bit, but boy is that nice. Okay, let's see if it's actually the here. 12, and with some extra spacing. That's beautiful, beautiful. I hate when I have to like read fast. I feel so uncomfortable. Okay, that's great. So if you happen to join me live, and if you're not here yet, like by the time I get the paper out and put this link in the chat, you can always type !paper, and the link will pop back up. And yeah, so it's nice when I have people to chat with, because it's fun. They get to ask questions and I get to make up answers. Okie dokie. Let's see, it's easy when it's analysis. I can just be like, I'm taking that one. Okay, what humans should say about tide-based systems. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your names, even though they seem pronounceable, because I'm just going to butcher them anyway. Loew and Siegfried Jaag. And I apologize. Introduction. The Humean Best Systems Account, BSA, not the Boy Scouts of America, who filed for bankruptcy, identify laws of nature with regularities in a system of truths that, as a whole, best conforms to scientific standards for theory choice. The BSA provides Humeans with an attractive account of laws of nature. Best Systems Account, Laws of Nature, and Humeans. Alright, so it's kind of like, I guess that's what we're talking about here. To avoid commitment to primitive, unhuman whatnots by taking laws to be mere regularities. It avoids laws to be mere regularities, primitive, unhuman whatnots. And it improves upon earlier regularity theories by identifying laws not in isolation, but in how well they fit into a whole system of truths. Okay. In this paper, we address a challenge for the BSA that arises when different systems are tied for being best. In Section 2, we briefly explain the Humean BSA. In Section 3, we argue that the problem of ties affect every version of the BSA because it arises regardless of which standard for theory choice Humeans adopt. In Section 4, we propose Humean responses to the problem. We invoke pragmatic aspects of Humean laws to show that the BSA, despite violating some of our intuitive judgments, can account for scientific practice. Okay, so I've been complaining about these paragraphs right here that describe everything, but in this case I'd have to go with, you know what, this is like such a short introduction that this doesn't even matter in some sense. It's just like, this is just This is like an extended abstract, basically. So, I have less complaint if the introduction is so short and then you do this, but when you have a big introduction and then you have this sort of like index, I'm just like, it's a philosophy paper, just keep going. Alright, now for me being a curmudgeon. The best system's account of laws. According to Humeanism, the world's fundamental metaphysical structure consists of the so-called Humean mosaic, that is, the complete pattern of instantiations of perfectly natural properties at space-time points, or their point-sized occupants, and the spatiotemporal relations between them. The Humean element of this metaphysics is that these property instantiations are freely recombinable. No property instantiation has any modal implications for the instantiation of any other property. Lewis's BSA is a recipe for reducing the laws to the Humean mosaic. It has two guiding ideas. The first official guiding idea has been much discussed in the literature. It says that the laws are those contingent generalizations that appear in a deductively closed system of truths that best balances strength and simplicity, and whose predicates refer only to perfectly natural properties. Okay? The second unofficial guiding idea has received less attention. It says that our implicit scientific standards for judging lawhood are in fact constitutive of lawhood. Okay, for anti-humans, the standards science uses to discover laws reveal which facts hold as a matter of law, but not determine that they have this status. What makes something a law, according to anti-Humeans, is additional metaphysical machinery, such as primitive laws, irreducible necessitation relations, dispositional essences, or primitive subjective facts. By contrast, according to the unofficial guiding idea, these standards are not just criteria for discovering laws. Instead, the laws are laws because they belong to a system that best conforms to the scientific standards for judging lawhood. Okie doke. It's sort of like the terrain for what people think laws are. The two guiding ideas are connected. The official idea can be motivated as a specific proposal about what criteria scientists use for judging laws. Lewis argues that standards of simplicity, of strength, of balance between them are to be those that guide us in assessing the credibility of rival hypotheses as to what the laws are. A version of the BSA guided by the unofficial idea is more flexible. It is non-committal about what epistemic standards scientists in fact use, and merely insists that these standards, whatever they are constitutive of lawhood. Due to its greater flexibility, the unofficial idea is essential when assessing the plausibility of the BSA. Interpreting BSA in light of the unofficial idea avoids many common criticisms. For example, Roberts and Woodward argue that science never trades strength for simplicity when choosing laws, and Loew maintains that scientific laws do not track perfectly natural properties. These criticisms, however, do not undermine the unofficial idea. This version of the BSA can be adapted whatever criteria science in fact employs when discovering laws and cast in whatever language it uses. The unofficial idea, thus, seems to guarantee that the BSA draws the distinction between laws and non-laws exactly as science does. However, as we will argue, it faces a problem in case of ties, where two or more systems satisfy the standards for lawhood equally well. Alright, let's just double check what this... They constitutive. Okay, so when it's constitutive of lawhood, then you're going to have two laws that are equally constitutive. Alright, that's where we're going. Or it looks like that. Let's highlight these things. We've got this one here. And then the first one was... Oh, it's just the Humean mosaic, that everything's like a independent point-sized point in the world, the Humean mosaic. Alright, so no property instantiation has any modal implication for the instantiation of any other property. So everything is independent, and that whatever the laws are, whatever our judgments are, that is what it is to be a law. And so it avoids most of the criticisms, but we're going to get a new one then. The problem of ties. Man, I'm afraid I read this already, but I don't think I did. I think I wanted to read this. I couldn't. Hall 2015 describes a scenario that makes the worry ties create for BSA particularly depressing. Imagine physics has narrowed down the candidate theories about the fundamental laws to just two, safe and sorry. They make the same predictions about all actual phenomena and satisfy all theoretical virtues, e.g. simplicity, equally well. The only way to decide which theory is true would be conducting an experiment involving a powerful particle collider. Scientists calculate that if safe is true, the experiment would go smoothly and confirm safe. But if sorry is true, it would lead to a catastrophic second Big Bang. Because of the risk, the scientists decide not to perform the experiment. Better safe than sorry, they think. Okay, that's hilarious. You know, I'm a big fan of philosophical thought experiments, but I also get very annoyed with them for the same reasons, because I'm a big fan, so I get annoyed about some of these things. If all they do is predict one thing, that we all die versus not all die, they're pretty cruddy theories. And so I'm sure there'd be something else to go on there. Just have a little patience, my friends. Okay. Hall construes a scenario with the unofficial guiding idea in mind. Since the experiment is never performed, safe and sorry satisfy the criteria science uses for judging lawhood equally well, and so are tied for being the best system. Whatever the standards for bestness are, 2 or more systems might satisfy these standards equally well. For example, according to Loew 83 BSA, the laws are the contingent regularities in the systems that best balance strength and simplicity. We can then fill in the details of Hall's scenario such that safe and sorry balance these virtues equally well. Yeah, it's only going to work in the theoretical case, because in reality, nothing is going to be perfectly equal. There's always going to be one a little bit more than the other. It is very plausible that scientists would take one of either safe or sorry to describe the true laws in Hall's scenario. They would reason that it is either determinately true that were they to perform the experiment, a second Big Bang would occur, or it is determinately false. And moreover, they would assume that this counterfactual is determinately true or false because one of either safe or sorry states the universe's true laws. So scientists would assume that one of the theories is determinately true, even though knowledge of the occurrent facts underdetermines which one. However, if humanism is correct, and the laws reduced to the Humean mosaic, it is hard to see how there could be such an epistemic gap between knowing the Humean mosaic and knowing the laws. Yeah, because it can only be one law, but you have exactly equal stuff between them, so you'd have 2 laws that are not identical, that are equally fundamental, and equifundamentality, I take it, is wrong. Or at least not countenanced in this area. Indeed, no version of the BSA can correctly delineate the laws in Hall's scenario. Humeans have various options of what the laws are in cases of ties, but the following 3 accounts are the most plausible. First, Lewis's original BSA says that law is any regularity that earns inclusion in the ideal system, or in the case of ties, in every ideal system. This account has the following consequence for ties. Intersecting laws. If 2 or more systems are tied for being best, the laws are generalizations in every best system. Second, Lewis departs from his earlier account in requiring that laws presuppose a unique best system. He now holds that a regularity is a law if and only if it is a theorem of the best system. Accordingly, Lewis's more recent reaction to ties is no laws. If 2 or more systems are tied for being best, there are no laws. Okay, so you throw out the law idea if 2 things have to be non-equal or non-identical, but have to be equifundamental. Why is no one just saying there's like patience, people? Like, how are we gonna have? I mean, the problem I have with this is you'd have to have a theory that says we can't learn any more about the world, which seems very strange, saying that these 2 are equifundamental. How could that possibly be? I mean, you'd have to have a third theory that would say that, and that doesn't seem like it's realistic. So where's the patience here? I mean, I'm not criticizing the paper or the article. I'm just criticizing sort of the state of the discussion. Why can't we be patient? And third, Hall maintains that the epistemic standards for lawhood are constitutive of laws, and so presupposes the following account of ties. Indeterminate laws. If 2 or more systems are tied for being best, it is metaphysically indeterminate what the laws are. Yeah, see, I just want to be empirically patient, not metaphysically indeterminate. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. In the following, we will be neutral about which account humans should endorse. What matters is that no version can capture that one of safe or sorry describes the unique laws in Hall's scenario and underwrites determinate counterfactuals about the experiment. According to intersecting laws, if safe and sorry are tied, the laws or whatever regularities are part of both systems. If the 2 theories only overlap a very little, this proposal could lead us with next to no laws. And in the extreme case where there is no overlap, the world has no laws. But even if there is overlap between safe and sorry, the account cannot capture either safe or sorry, that either safe or sorry describe the unique true laws in Hall's scenario. Moreover, since safe and sorry make contradictory predictions about what will happen if the experiment was performed, laws determined by their intersection would neither yield the verdict safe makes nor the verdict sorry makes. This is interesting with this intersection thing. Usually when you have competing theories, they don't actually agree on stuff. There's some sort of incommensurability. That's why you can't put them together and to have one law. If you have two laws, it's because there's something they view the universe very differently, and that means that you can't actually get an intersection, because that's the whole point, is that they are incommensurable. They have very, very different views of the universe. And so there's a question here of exactly what this intersection means and how much overlap there is, and then what actually accounts as the two theories. Because you could say if like there's overlap, then you could pull out all that stuff, and then you'd be always left with a completely empty intersection of the two. So there's a little bit of a background question I have about really what's going on and how they're conceiving of these overlaps. Okay, no law entails that there are no laws in Hall's scenario. You see, I'm worried about this because it seems like if you can always like if there's always an overlap, you can always take that out of each of those theories, and then you'd always end up in the no laws scenario. No laws entails that there are no laws in Hall's scenario. This consequence is surprising because Hall describes the case such that science has successfully narrowed down the candidates for the fundamental laws to just two. So in this world, the predictive and inductive practices of science clearly work. But according to no laws, this world nonetheless has no laws, and so arguably no determinate counterfactual structure. Finally, indeterminate laws makes it metaphysically indeterminate whether safe or sorry describes the laws in Hall's scenario. It is then also metaphysically indeterminate what would happen if the experiment was performed. In sum, no version of the BSA captures our intuitive judgments. Okay. Hall's scenario resembles familiar counterexamples to Humeanism due to Carroll and Tooley. I think I read something on Carroll and Tooley, that's what I'm remembering now, which can also be understood as involving ties. For example, Tooley imagines a world that contains exactly 10 different types of fundamental particles. Physicists have observed 54 of the possible 55 interaction types between these particles and have posited 54 corresponding fundamental laws. However, due to the boundary conditions at that world, no instance of the missing 55th interaction type, namely between X and Y particles, occur. Tooley conjectures that scientists would assume that there is a unique fundamental law that determines what would happen if X and Y particles were to interact. However, since such interactions are not part of the pattern of non-gnomic facts, knowledge of everything that happens in such a universe will not enable one to formulate a unique axiomatic system containing theorems about the manner of interaction of particles types X and Y. In other words, the scientific criteria for the theory choice seems to underdetermine the relevant law. Hence, humans cannot capture the intuition that there are unique laws about the interaction between X and Y particles. I mean, I would just read. These setups are very interesting to me, and how they're declaring that you have 55 types of 54 that you can observe, and then you'd have a third law that prevents you from ever observing the 55th. So that like extra law is really sort of odd to me, but still, again, not the author's problem, but just I find these thought experiments kind of odd for that extra law that had to be thrown in there. What kind of law is that? Okay, Humeans have given two types of responses to Tooley-style cases. The first response is that the anti-Humean intuitions they elicit reflect historically contingent, idiosyncratic features of our concept of law. The second response concedes that these anti-Humean intuitions are relevant, but say that contradicting them entails only a modest revisionism that is outweighed by the transparency and simplicity of Humean metaphysics. Yeah, maybe. These responses may seem equally effective for Hall's scenario. After all, Humeans can explain why scientists would not conduct the particle collider experiment. Even if the best systemization of the Humean mosaic as a whole entails, given that the experiment is not performed, a tie between safe and sorry, realistic scientists do not know the entire mosaic. Hence, scientists cannot rule out the exact situation that would discriminate between safe and sorry has happened or will in some distant part of the universe, and so both theories remain epistemic possibilities. For all scientists know, sorry might be the unique best system, in which case performing the experiment would lead to a disastrous Big Bang. This epistemic possibility is enough to explain why scientists would not perform the experiment. All that Humean theories of laws leave unaccounted for are the scientists' anti-Humean judgments, and so Humeans can use the same resources as in Tooley's case to explain why this cost is bearable. We think these responses are part of the Humean answer to the problem of ties, but they are not the full story. Okay, so you double down and just be like, sure, and it's like, well, that's fine, and if you have a problem with it, you're not being Humean enough. Okay, they say, if we're Humean, we don't have to worry about it because it's just not that big of a deal. Bite the bullet. Okay, Hall adds a twist to his scenario that makes it more troubling than other similar cases. Suppose again that science has narrowed down the candidate theories for laws to two, safe and sorry. As before, an experiment involving a powerful particle collider is the only way to decide between them. If scientists do not conduct the experiment, both theories are equally well supported by all even in principle available evidence. But this time nothing catastrophic happens if they conduct the experiment regardless of which theory is true. The experiment would simply confirm one of the two theories. Scientists then need to decide whether they want to spend enormous resources on building the necessary particle collider. Sounds like a very realistic problem nowadays. It is very plausible that scientists would have at least some inclination to perform the experiment. I should hope so, that's their job. And if they want funding, they better argue for it. As argued above, it is natural for scientists to think that there is a fact of the matter about which laws are true. But Hall argues that Humeanism has the implausible consequence that scientists would have absolutely no motivation for performing the experiment. Okay. By your own Humean lights, it's not that you would be finding out about some basic aspect of physical reality which you would otherwise be ignorant. On the contrary, if you forego this experiment, then you can be forever confident that you know all the facts about the fundamental laws that there are to know, namely that they are indeterminate as between safe laws and sorry laws. So why spend the money? If you're rational, you won't, because you recognize no reason whatsoever in favor of doing so. And in that you are, I reckon, at odds with just about every one of your colleagues. Okay, so basically, if you just stop wherever you are, you know everything there is to know, and then there's no reason to continue because you know everything already because you've stopped looking. So it's doubling down on the anti-human, the Humeanism, just in the negative. From a Humean perspective, scientists would know everything there is to know about the world's gnomic structure, even if they do not perform the experiment. In the quoted passage, Hall presupposes his own Humean account of ties, specifically indeterminate laws. However, if either intersecting laws or no laws is true, scientists who know that there is a tie between safe and sorry would also know everything there is to know about the world's gnomic structure, that the laws are the regularities in the intersection of safe and sorry, or respectively that there are no laws. So if Humeanism is true, there appears to be no reason to perform the experiment because we would already know everything about laws. I mean, is the only reason we ever do anything is just to know everything about the laws? I mean, maybe there's other reasons. I guess maybe this is sort of like science for science's sake or knowledge for knowledge's sake. But I mean, maybe there's pragmatic considerations. Oh, that's right. I think that's where the author said they were going. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, because it just seems like this is a little bit heavy-handed there. No reason to perform experiment because we'd already know everything about laws. Well, just because we know everything about the laws doesn't mean there's no reason to perform the experiment because sometimes we're wrong. I mean, just because you'd have to be, again, a third theory saying there is nothing else beyond safe and sorry. Okay. This practical relevance sets Hall's scenario apart from Tooley's case. It would be highly implausible if Humeanism had potentially revisionary implications for scientific practice. Telling the physicists not to conduct an experiment because Humeanism is true seems absurd as telling the mathematicians that they must change their ways and abjure countless errors now that philosophy has discovered there are no classes. So Humeans need a different reply to Hall's scenario. Seems fair enough. A Humean response to the problem of ties. One Humean response to Hall's scenario is that realistic scientists are unlikely to find themselves in a situation. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. First, if nature is kind, there will be no ties no tie in the first place. And second, even if there is, scientists would have to know that there is a tie unless they perform the experiment. This is my big beef right here. Knowing the latter requires knowing that no event in the entire history of the universe decides between safe and sorry. Yes, this is exactly the big problem. Like, how could you do that? Without such knowledge, it remains epistemically possible that either one is the unique best system. Humean scientists would then have a reason to perform the experiment because in doing so, they might, for all they know, discover which theory is actually true. Yeah, you have to go out there and look. It doesn't help to do only theory, especially in empirical science. However, Humeans could and should say more. Even if Hall's scenario is far-fetched, it reveals something about the norms guiding scientific discovery. It is plausible that actual scientists would judge that they were they in a situation where they know that the epistemic standards for lawhood underdetermine which theory is true, they would have reason to perform the experiment. And this fact reveals a norm implicit in scientific practice, specifically that when scientists have the option to perform a crucial experiment that decides between two theories, they should perform it, assuming they have funding. Of course, the scientific imperative might be outweighed by extra scientific considerations, such as the cost of performing the experiment. Yes, Hall's scenario would then show that Humeanism cannot account for a norm implicit in scientific practice. We will argue that Humeans can account for the relevant norm by appealing to pragmatic aspects of laws. Moreover, our argument works regardless of which account of ties Humeans endorse. Gaining new knowledge is not the only outcome scientists hope for when conducting an experiment. Imagine an experiment that would show either that the world's fundamental laws are deterministic or indeterministic. What? How could you do that? I can't even imagine that, because this is these are metaphysical things over here. These are not, you can't decide empirically about determinism or indeterminism. That'd be very, 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 very strange. I mean, that would basically be violating like one of Hume's principles, I think. Anyway, well, I definitely don't. Yeah. So I don't buy this sentence right here. I don't even like reading that sentence right there. Again, nothing against the author here. It's just this is my disposition, I guess you could say. Even if it is a Nobel Prize-winning discovery either way, scientists might still hope that the true laws are deterministic, because deterministic laws are, ceteris paribus, practically more useful. So scientists are not only interested in knowing the laws, they are also interested in the laws having features that make them practically useful. You know, yes, that's true. But again, this third law that they'd have to apply, that it's completely indeterministic or completely deterministic. What if it's like it's indeterministic, but the chance of it being indeterministic outcome is so impossibly small or something? I mean, it seems, again, this is seems like this is a confusion of the metaphysics and of the science at this point. And so if you're going to say there's a norm that they want, that laws should be useful in understanding the world, then how could you empirically prove that? I mean, that's a norm, and that is not something that science can give us. So I understand the point of the argument here. I just don't like this argumentation right here. I mean, sure, we want the laws of nature we discover to be useful, but not. How else can we say this? But that's a pragmatic position. That's a philosophy. That's not something you can empirically determine. Like, because then you could push the question, then why are they interested in them? And that would be a different thing. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, as we will show, Humean scientists in Hall's scenario have a pragmatic reason for performing the experiment, because doing so results in laws that have more explanatory power. This motivation fits nicely with how the BSA is frequently presented. For example, Albert points out that the purpose of Humean laws is to provide information that will serve you well, or reasonably well, or as well as possible in making your way about in the world. In fact, there are two independent arguments for why Humean scientists have reason to perform the experiment, which presuppose different conceptions of explanation. The first argument is that if scientists perform the experiment, the world has more determinate counterfactual structure than it had otherwise. If the experiment is not performed, counterfactuals about which safe and sorry disagree have no determinate truth value. As we point out in section 3, this consequences arises for all 3 Humean accounts of ties. By contrast, if the experiment is performed, the relevant counterfactuals have determinate truth values. Sure, if you do the experiment, you get more information, and we like more information. Many philosophers, including Humeans, hold that counterfactuals support explanations. Hence, performing the experiment leads to laws with more explanatory power because the laws support more determinate counterfactuals and so more explanations. Safe and sorry make divergent predictions only about phenomena that would have to be created with a powerful particle collider. Counterfactuals about these phenomena, however, are still relevant for explaining actual facts. If there are determinate counterfactuals about what would have happened if such a phenomenon had occurred, its non-occurrence can be used to explain what actually happens. For example, suppose safe and sorry make different predictions only about systems whose energy exceeds a certain quantity E. As it happens, no actual system's energy exceeds E. Nonetheless, it might sometimes be expedient to explain actual phenomenon, for example, why matter is stable, by appeal to systems energy being below E. If there are determinate counterfactuals about how systems behave beyond E, such explanations are available. Yeah, I mean, it does matter that we have like the sort of right thinking about the world. If we don't think about the scientific theories in the right way, one of the consequences is that we're going to be misled in making up more theories because we don't understand how other theories relate to the right, correct theory. So having like the right background theory, even if we can't test it, will help with fitting other theories into our picture of the world. So that does matter. Even if we can't test certain things about the differences between safe and sorry, the fact that we know which one it is makes us understand how all the pieces go together. So it makes a big difference in the long run. Our second argument appeals to the link between explanation and unification. Oh, maybe this is where we're going. Unification is the idea of having a single compact system of basic truths from which as many other truths as possible can be derived. Many Humeans think that BSA laws explain by unifying. Laws then have more explanatory power if they are more unifying, that is, allow us to derive more truths while reducing the total number of independent phenomena that we have to accept as ultimate or given. This is not what I was saying exactly above. This is Occam's razor here. If you can just have some axioms and derive the stuff from the axioms, then you have the simplest possible explanation, really. Humean scientists then have a reason for performing the experiment because it leads to laws that are more unifying and hence more explanatory. If the experiment is performed, one of either safe or sorry states the unique laws. By contrast, if it is not performed, the laws will be some other facts that are less unifying than either system. The details depend on one's account of ties. Given intersecting laws, the laws are the intersection of safe and sorry, which is less informative than either system and so allow us to derive fewer truths. Given no laws, there are no laws, so we cannot derive any contingent truths. Given indeterminate laws, the laws are indeterminate between safe and sorry. We can then still derive the same truths about actual phenomena since the two systems agree about all actual predictions. However, the fundamental gnomic facts now comprise that it is indeterminate which, safe or sorry, describes the laws. Hence, a complete description of the fundamental gnomic facts must mention both theories instead of just one, and so the basic truths from which other truths are derived are significantly more complex. So this is the Occam. You don't X out the complexity. So the laws are more unifying if the experiment is performed. So let us address two worries. First, it may be objected that the resulting increase in explanatory power is too marginal to warrant conducting the experiment. How much explanatory power Humeans gain by performing the experiment depends on both which version of the BSA is true and which account of explanation is presupposed. For example, if indeterminate laws is true, the added explanatory power in terms of counterfactuals is arguably rather minimal. In this case, the only counterfactual determinacy we gain from performing the experiment concerns events that do not actually happen. Though, as we have argued, these counterfactuals can still be relevant for explaining actual facts. Our reply to Hall's scenario, however, works even if indeterminate laws is true. More importantly, Humeans still gain some explanatory power from additional counterfactual determinacy. Even if this gain is rather minimal, it suffices to rebut Hall's claim that Humean scientists have no reason whatsoever to perform the experiment. Moreover, while the increase in counterfactual determinacy may be marginal, the gain in unification is substantial. It makes a significant difference for unification whether the fundamental gnomic facts that serve as unexplained explainers for other facts mention only either safe or sorry, whichever the experiment shows to be true, or whether they need to mention both theories. So I'm not sure, like, why can the Humean appeal to pragmatic concerns? Like, is that just ad hoc, or is that okay? I just don't know. I mean, this is like a legit question. I don't think this is a problem for the authors. I think their reasoning is fine. I'm just not sure where pragmatism and Humeanism match up. So I'm pretty sure they can. I'm just not sure exactly how that works. So in some sense, that you are arguing Occam's razor and pragmatism here, saying, look, if it's less complex, it's good because it wastes a lot of time if you have to mention a lot more facts for both of them, and you save a lot of time only mentioning one fact of the matter, one theory, either safe or sorry, not both. So we've got pragmatic concerns, and so I guess the Humean is saying, well, you're throwing pragmatism in with the way we decide stuff. Okay, so maybe if you assume there's a pragmatic aspect to how we understand laws of nature, then we can appeal to the pragmatic aspect of just reducing our two theories to one theory, as opposed to saying, well, we have more stuff in our theory now than we would if we did this experiment. Okay, I think it depends on how you're slicing the BSA, as the authors did just mention. So maybe that's where the real understanding has to be done, and exactly what counts as best systems. Okay. Second, it might be objected that while Humean scientists have a reason for performing the experiment, it is not the right kind of reason. Scientists who perform a tie-breaking experiment certainly would do so to find out which theory is true. They would not think of themselves as making the case that one of them is true. So our account does not get the scientist psychology right. Yeah, they're trying to describe how the world is, not that they're making it so. But okay, well, in reply, we point out that Humeans already admit that they cannot account for scientists' judgment about the kinds of cases Carroll and Tooley describe, and have provided strategies for dealing with them. If Hall's scenario creates any additional problems, then only because it has revisionary implications for scientific practice. Our account, however, shows that Hall's scenario has no such implications. Okay, fun little paper. Again, let's see, what was good about this? Sets up a nice experiment and sort of hammers away at different sides of the experiment, so you get to see sort of the discussion that's going on here. You've got one sort of like decision, safe or sorry, and then you can sort of look at how we understand our laws in terms of this one experiment. So it's nice in the sense that you have a very sort of simple enough case that makes a difference for how we understand the laws of nature, which is something massively complex. So this is a nice discussion of this and how it matters. Now, as the in this like oversimplification of how the world is, this problem here about how you had to throw in extra laws about knowing stuff that you couldn't possibly ever know about how the universe is, that the way the two things are exactly equal in all respects except for the one thing that would cause the world to explode. It's just unrealistic, but I mean, not the point. It's trying to draw out the Humean to force them into a response. Now, the response the authors here gave was that there is a pragmatic aspect about reducing the mental load of our theories. Basically, they should be less complex. Oh yeah, I did have a problem here. So there's two issues I take with not this account, but just what's going on. I fear that the understanding of how intersection and overlap are conceived of here with respect to like incommensurability is a little funky, because if things are really completely separate, then any overlap can always be like pulled out, and then we can reduce the theories to two things that do not overlap anymore, and therefore there is no law, or no next to no laws, so very little overlap. So that would be that's an odd thing here. This is not the author's problem, this is just sort of, I think, what the state of the discussion in this area is. And then the other one was the best systems account and how we conceive of that, and if there is what kind of pragmatic considerations are with implicit in scientific standards. So if the Occam's razor, in some sense, of conceptual load is there already in how we judge the scientific laws, then this is okay, because then they can just appeal to, well, we have to have a less complex theory, and there's two of them, and so we want one of them. So even though we know everything there is to know at the moment, we just want to make the complexity go down. So that is, in some sense, they're just appealing to something in the implicit scientific standards. How you cash out what is actually good and simpler and still correct is very hard. So there's a small worry I have right here, but overall I think most people would say the simpler the theory, that we can simplify the theories, is a good thing, and the scientists would agree to that we'd rather have simple theories that all work and are true, as opposed to multiple theories that both work, but if we did an experiment we wouldn't have to worry about one of them anymore. Okay, but that's about it. Nice paper. I do like my philosophy of science, so it's always fun for me. Any questions from the peanut gallery out in Twitch land? Guess not. So that's it for now. I'll be back in the morning. Yep. And so everyone have a good night and stay safe out there. So, bye-byes.